political perspective, it actually encouraged the axis of evil. Hamas and Iran congratulate the courts on the arrest warrants, and that should ring a loud bell to the international community. If a terrorist organization and the biggest destabilizing force of evil in the Middle East, Iran, the biggest funder of terror, are celebrating these arrest warrants, this should send a clear message whose political side this decision is, because it is a political decision. It creates also a twisted and artificial symmetry with the so-called arrest warrant for the dead Muhammad death. It is an absurdity that a prime minister elected in a democratic state is being put on the same equivalence as a head of a murderous terrorist in a terrorist organization that we know, in fact, that is dead. This political decision in trying to make somewhat of a distorted equivalence between the two should set the signal on how the moral compass of the ICC in particular, and some in the international community as well, has been completely distorted. From a legal perspective, on the substance, it is completely false. Israel is facilitating aid into Gaza. Israel has done more, and it's important for me also to say it out clearly. We are not restricting any humanitarian aid going into Gaza. On the contrary, we are making sure that there's a constant flow going in. There are more than 700,000 tons of aid that has already gone into Gaza. So beside these accusations are baseless and false, it actually lacks a jurisdiction. Israel didn't join the Rome Convention. And the second issue is that it contradicts the court's own core principle of complementarity. Look, Israel has a robust judicial system, and that principle of the ICC going into a democratic country with a sovereign, with a robust judicial system that is well known around the world, has put into question some of the legal issues about these arrest warrants as well. We believe and we see, and from speaking to our allies as well, that the ICC has lost its legitimacy. The court has transformed into a political organ and a political tool. That's why it's actually lost its legitimacy. And if we are looking on our allies as well, we actually are empowered by the support of our friends, and especially the bipartisan support in the U.S., the statement from President Joe Biden, and the statements from the new administration, the presidency administration that is coming in January. And Oren?
Thank you. And perhaps now we'll go to some remarks on the Lebanese issue.
On the Lebanese issue as well?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, it's important to note how we got to this point, and I think it's pretty obvious. Israel was forced into a war it didn't choose to. It was forced into this war. On the 8th of October, Hezbollah has started shooting rockets and targeting civilians' home in the northern of Israel. This was an unprovoked attack on our country and on our people. Ever since the 7th of October, for a whole year, while our towns are being destroyed, while our people were murdered, including the event of 12 children in the north of Israel who were only going to play soccer in the afternoon, were murdered by Hezbollah's rocket. We have endured that for a whole year, while the international community has created discussions and was committed and came even here to Israel on a commitment to try and find a diplomatic solution. For a whole year, we've been waiting for the international community to step up and step in to bring a diplomatic solution. This is what Israel wanted. A few months ago, we were left with no other choice but to go and defend our people, defend our community, in order to be able to bring back more than 60,000 refugees that were for more than a year away from their home and unable to access their property or their home. We went on this mission to bring them back and to bring back the safety and the security to our northern border. The goal of our operation in the north is to prevent Hezbollah from having the ability to do so and to allow the resident of the north to return safely to their home. We have shared with you a lot of evidence and information on how Hezbollah has built its power throughout years in order to try and facilitate another 7 of October massacre from our northern border. Our goal is to make sure, there's two main goals. One, that they will not be able to accumulate more arsenal and go back to the military power and the military force that they held before. We are aiming to prevent that, to rebuild their strength. And the other one is to make sure that Hezbollah doesn't go south of the Litani River. Now, there can be many words and many sections in this document, in this agreement, but the core issue is about enforcement, to make sure that this will not happen. And unfortunately, throughout years, we've been let down by the international community, including forces like UNIFIL, who were meant to prevent Hezbollah's threat on Israel. They failed Israel. And so we have to make sure that the enforcement of those two objectives is in fact happening. And that's what's really concerning us. One thing must be clear, and in my opinion, it is clear and agreed upon by all parts of the government and all its members. We will not allow a return to October 6. Any violation that occur will be addressed immediately. We will no longer agree under any circumstances to sell the future in exchange for temporary quiet in the present.
Thank you, Deputy Foreign Minister. Now we'll go to the question. Please, Dan. Just present yourself.
What's the sequencing?
So the cabinet will be joining this afternoon in order to discuss this agreement. It is extremely sensitive, and I do not want to go into details about it because of the sensitivity of the issue. Once we have more details also about the resolution or the outcome of the votings and the discussions in the cabinet, we'll be able to elaborate a little bit more on the issue.
Thank you. Please. Can you please present yourself?
Yes, Lahav Harkov, Jewish Insider. About the Lebanon deal, my understanding is France is supposed to play a major part in the monitoring mechanism, but that at the moment France says they would arrest Netanyahu were he to visit France, and therefore Israel is vetoing French participation. Is that something that has been resolved? Because my understanding as of last night, it was not resolved. And about the ICC, tomorrow is the deadline to appeal those arrest warrants. Does Israel plan to appeal it? And if not, what is Israel doing about it?
Okay, so on the issues of the agreement, we are going to put, our main attention on the enforcement. As the UNIFIL and other organizations who were meant to prevent Hezbollah's building of power and creating a serious threat like these days on Israel, they actually failed us. And we are working closely with our American allies in order to build a mechanism that will be able to sustain that years to the future as well. Any other in-depth details, we will elaborate after the meeting with the cabinet, when we'll have more details about it.
Just to add to what the Deputy Foreign Minister mentioned, I'm not sure that this was the exact French wording, the way you described it. Okay.
And on the issue, there was another question?
The appeal.
So look, we have a legal team here in the Foreign Ministry, and we're still looking into all the results and all of the aspects of it. We are looking into whether we will appeal or not, but we haven't decided. We're still looking into the details and what the consequences might be.
Thank you. Please.
Hi there, Thomas Helm from the National News. I was just wondering if you could give us any more details about discussions regarding guarantees for freedom of action in Lebanon after a deal is struck if Israel perceives new threats to be emerging.
So as I said, I will not go into details because of the sensitivity of the issue and because the cabinet is meant to discuss it this afternoon. The points of enforcement is the most important. The mechanism for that is the one that we are going to look the most into details. But I cannot go into the exact details of the mechanism because of the sensitivity and the timing as well, obviously.
Please.
Hello, Marie Finoshina, RT. I have two questions, one about the deal and another one about the ICC. One of the key objectives Israel set in this conflict has been to ensure the safe return of residents of northern part of Israel. You mentioned that, more than 60,000 people, and establishment of a reliable buffer zone. As far as we understand, these goals have not been exactly achieved and realized, which made it source of disappointment from, for example, several heads of northern councils. Why is Israel agreeing to this deal now instead of, let's say, a year ago, when it might have saved lives on both sides? And so what changed? And if this agreement does ensure the safe return of these people, then please elaborate on that. And additionally, the deal places significant responsibilities on international partners such as UNIFIL and France, and you mentioned that they previously have already failed Israel and failed to prevent Hezbollah from being militarized. So is Israel confident in relying on partners who in the past have shown inconsistencies in their commitments? And ICC, under their own statute...
Sure. Or maybe we'll do it one by one and then...
Oh, yeah.
Pen? We'll get you a
I
pen.
can write it down. Yeah.
More than generous.
So the first one about our partners and about the capability of bringing back 60,000 refugees back to their home and the capability to secure our northern border and our allies, or how this mechanism is going to be built. Well, I won't, it's not, look, this war in Lebanon was forced on us. We didn't want it. Israel has wanted a diplomatic solution. Matter of fact, we've been working with many partners in the international community, in particular as you know, France and other allies with the Americans, in order to come into a diplomatic solution. That would have been our preferred solution. Israel does not want war. We know how a war looks like. A war is an ugly thing. And we have done throughout years now everything in our capability in order to avoid war and to go by the way of a diplomatic solution. But for a whole year, the international community, including our allies, were incapable of bringing a diplomatic solution. Hezbollah will not back down. Hezbollah has tied itself with Hamas, with its objectives. And so we were left with no other option but to go into war in order to push them back, to dismantle as much as possible the capability of Hezbollah, and in order to bring back the safety and the security of our northern border. Is there more missions to do in Lebanon in regards to dismantling Hezbollah? Yes, of course. But if there is a diplomatic solution, which Israel has always preferred, in order to make sure that our safety of our citizens and that they are capable of returning back to their home 4 years back, obviously we'll prefer that. And on the other hand, if we are able to secure that Hezbollah cannot go back to its full power of what was before, and that it will not pass the border of the Litani River, these are two major objectives that we see as a capability for the people to actually come back. But it's also important to note that we will not go back to the 6th of October, where we know, when we have evidence and we see how Hezbollah is arming himself, how they are building tunnels in order to plan another full-blown massacre similar to the one on the 7th of October through our northern border, to arm itself with an enormous, exorbitant amount of missiles and rockets that can, harm our communities, our children. We will react immediately. And I hope that with the new mechanism that we will be able to build, the forces there will do a far better job than what UNIFIL or other international community who were in charge of making sure that Israel is capable of living safely on that border. They failed it. So we will not trust those particular again, and that's why we will build a different mechanism for that.
I just may add on your question, Israel has not changed its objectives. The one that changed its conduct is Hezbollah. Hezbollah is now agreeing to a new, or hopefully we will be in a situation in which we will be in a shape in which the residents of those communities can go back. We did not change our objective. It is still the objective, and it will, God willing, will be met. It will be met.
So bottom line, this agreement, how these residents...
Of course.
Or we have to wait for this mechanism.
So I won't talk, I can't go into details about the period of time until...
Exactly. But I think it is safe to say that the objective of the war in this regard hasn't changed.
And what was the first question?
It was a question about the ICC, no?
Okay.
Thank you. And under the Rome Statute, 124 member states are obliged to arrest Prime Minister and Defense Minister if they visit these countries. Does this mean that Israel will now focus on strengthening and expanding relations with countries that do not pose such a threat? Russia.
Sorry, so the question was whether...
This one is about...
Yeah, no, but with the ICC, the question is
Whether
about
are
our
we-
bilateral relationship.
Whether are we exploring?
Will it push?
Look, we have many allies, including allies who are signed and are members of this convention, and we are in a conversation with them. I think that the main message, first of all, needs to be on the bipartisan response from the United States. There's some legislations that they were talking about and some remarks that are absolutely true. I mean, I think that every leader of the free world needs to tremble with a decision like that, because Israel during this war has set, an unprecedented standard on the issues of humanitarian aid, but also on the issues of civilian casualties. No other army in the world has gone to our level of or equivalence or the threshold that we've actually set as a bar. And if the ICC is attacking such an extended level or reach of what we have actually reached in that sense, there is no other army or leader that will be able to reach that kind of threshold. And it means, and I think that the US really understand it really clearly, that it means, first of all, that any leader in the attempt to defend their countries will not be able to reach that threshold and will be under the threat of the ICC. They understand that they will be next. And so, this is a completely political decision on how it actually also not just back terrorist organization and the biggest destabilizing force in the Middle East, but it actually benefit terrorist organization, or it gives them incentive now to take specific wars or attack into civilized cities, into civilians' areas, to use them as human shields, as Hamas did, or if you take now Boko Haram or ISIS or any other terrorist organization, it motivates them to go and use civilians as human shield, because then the ICC will back them. And so that is really an awful, unlegal, decision, a political decision that was made, that with our counterpart, they understand in depth the consequences of a decision like that. And so we work very closely with them, and as we've studied it, they are studying it as well. And from what we hear, some of them will act. There'll be consequences of this decision as well with some of our allies.
Thank you. One very last question, please. No. Yes, please.
Hello, I am Sara Gomez from F Spanish News Agency. My question is regarding the Lebanon agreement discussing later today. If the Security Cabinet approves the agreement, the actual implementation will be a matter of days, matter of hours, or how long may it takes to the deal to be in place?
So, as I said before, it is very sensitive time. They are meant to meet in the afternoon. There needs to be a decision, a discussion, a decision. There might be a vote as well, and on whether or how this will be conducted, then we will know the rest of the process as well. Oren will be able to pull out a statement probably when they get out of the discussion, so that we can inform you also on a little bit more of the details.
Hopefully. Let's stop it here. We're still.
Yeah, the members of the cabinet know some of the details and are going to go into more details this afternoon.
And we're here at your disposal for any follow-up questions. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you
very much.
לא, הם מבקשים...
יש.
רגע, בוא נצא רגע מהמצלמות זה. בוא נמשיך.